classical education the key to Western prosperity? That's what I'm going to talk about. And it's not only knowledge in the classical sense about ancient Greek and so on. It's going to be about how we view knowledge. What is knowledge? And in the classical view, knowledge. Let's see. Sorry. We need to return to a classical view of knowledge. That there is true knowledge, evidence-based, based on experience, based on scientific evidence, and so on. And so, and how is this best acquired? That's what I'm going to discuss. And the first very important question to ask: why is school mandatory? Why do we really have to go to school? Can't we learn what we need to learn just by being around and being on the internet ourselves, learning without any instruction? Well, the reason is that in school you learn things that you do not learn that way. These are so-called biologically secondary skills and knowledge. And this, of course, is crucial for our scientific and technological leadership, and to be able to preserve and develop the countries or the polities that we have created. And, of course, to transmit cultural values that are also a prerequisite for retaining and developing this very complex society, including all this interdependent infrastructure that we heard about. And the competition with China, of course. It's easy to forget that mandatory schooling is a very recent phenomenon. You can say that around 1860 or so, systematic training by basically all children was introduced in Japan, Sweden, and Prussia, for instance. And within a couple of decades, Germany was technological leading country in several industries. Japan went from being medieval in about 1850 into combating Russia in the war of 1904. So within a 45-year period after they started to have systematic teaching of their children, you had this explosion. And it's not only that everybody went to school. I mean, this is true in virtually every country. In many countries, kids go to school, but they are not taught efficiently. So they know very little after 9 years in school. There are several such schools in Sweden also, by the way. And there's something called Herbart-Sillerism that was discovered and developed in those days, that you can actually teach children an enormous amount through structured teacher-led instruction and concrete subject-based course curricula with an appropriate progression. But it's important that schools or the school authorities actually select: these are the kind of subjects that you need to learn. This is the content of these subjects that you need to learn in order to, at the age of 18 or so, being prepared to become a lifelong learner yourself. This is not only about mathematics or so on, it's also about your own country's history, traditions, and understanding where you come from, who your ancestors were, and therefore understand your society and what you can contribute to this society. And so students or pupils were introduced by the teacher, then repetition, practice, consolidation was done in order to inculcate this knowledge. And the fact, some would say that today we have AI and we have Google and what have you, so why should you learn all these things? Well, having a lot in your mind that is worthwhile, that's really a necessary condition for being able to use AI and Google in an efficient way. And in the process, and this is very important, if you have structured teaching in a good learning environment, you also train your non-cognitive skills. And these are self-discipline, motivation, work ethic, perseverance, reliability, responsibility, punctuality, social skills, and emotional stability. That's why it's important to have a teacher say that you didn't arrive on time. You are destroying the learning environment for others. If you don't say so, you're not learning the kind of non-cognitive skills that are extremely important. And generally, a person with an extremely high IQ but with very little non-cognitive skills will not be able to succeed. So there's research out there saying that non-cognitive skills tend to be even more important. If you have perseverance, then you may succeed in any way, even if you're not that super smart. But the most crucial institution of the school system, that's the view of knowledge. And classically, it's knowledge and truth exists. People here, you're here, of course, for you this is evident. For most other people in academia, it's highly controversial to say so. And also that skills are domain specific and not general. So the fact that you know a lot of history and can discuss, can critically evaluate historical things that are happening in history, it doesn't mean that this translates into you being also very good at analyzing geography or political science. But that's the view of many pedagogues today, is that this is a general skill, so that can be decoupled from actual knowledge about what you're discussing. So you can just do history and then you will be able to evaluate basically anything, which is of course wrong. And also there is one intellectual I really like, and that's Joseph, the biological anthropologist Joseph Henrich, and from him I really learned, and I knew it before, but he's really made the point that humans have evolved to learn from others. We're super good at seeing who is the person in the room who's really knowledgeable. I should listen to that person and learn from that person and respect that person. That's how knowledge has been transmitted. And then, despite that, we got a whole group of professors and pedagogists who said that knowledge cannot be transferred from one individual to another individual. So the complete reverse. So therefore, according to this pedagogical ideas, the teacher was no longer the leader in the classroom. He or she was the coach who was, going around and helping students who were leading themselves. Of course, there are a few who can manage that and succeed anyway. But for most students, they will learn so much less. And for quite a large number of them, they will hardly learn anything. And today we have functional illiteracy is more than 10% in Europe and the United States by people aged 20 or so. Far more, I would say, maybe 15%. So the view of knowledge that has prevailed is the postmodern social constructivist view. Knowledge is imprecise and subjective. It's often linked to power. So therefore, you have to deconstruct it. So if the teacher tells you something and before we believe that if the teacher communicates something, it's useful to learn that. You should instead say that, the teacher is probably saying this to me because the teacher wants to have power over me. So student-centered learning, unencumbered by detailed course curricula, is the only legitimate pedagogical approach. That's how it became. We're now, luckily, at a turning point, I would say. I can see this in my work with this commission to come up with a new grading system. So people at Skolverket, after 30 years of failure, are the opportunists there are beginning to understand it's time to change sides. So that's really positive. And the postmodern view, and this is important, especially from an Engelsberg perspective, postmodern views stand in the way of teaching about what I call the miracle. There are things that are socially constructed, and there is in particular one social construction that is really the key to our prosperity. And it goes totally against our biology. And that is that the market order of contracts, impersonal rule of law, individualism, and personal freedom. We are not biologically constructed to believe in that. If we'd been that, it wouldn't have taken humanity until a few hundred years ago to discover this mechanism. So this is what enabled the explosion in standard of living, longevity, etc. But it took us more than 100,000 years to find it. Henrik says that it has to do with Christianity, that Christianity, they wanted people to look up to the church, and then they, during a period of 1500 years, broke down our tribalist instincts. And then when the church lost its grip, then the central government could take over and have monopoly of violence and so on. And within that system, we could develop and hone the system that has made us so rich, wealthy today. But since we are not biologically constructed to believe in this system instinctively, it's a fragile system, a social construction, and it will be incessantly attacked by collectivist ideologies. And this means that we actually have to teach students about the workings of this system and the struggle of our forefathers, ancestors, to establish it, and how many people have sacrificed their lives and their work in order to establish this. And of course, if we stop teaching it, we will lose it. And we will have to inculcate a feeling of gratitude and pride, or even awe, of being born into this system, and a feeling that, okay, when I become grown up, I will be part of it, and it will be my responsibility to take this forward, first defending it against its enemies, but also taking it forward. And we have to create awareness of its fragility, and so they understand that. And this is exactly what we are not allowed to do in the Swedish school system, or in the US school system for that matter. And that's what we see also everywhere. And this really has to change. I have one picture here. So we can create a virtuous circle. True and important knowledge exists. And if we master such knowledge, then the world opens up for us to grow and to realize our ambition in voluntary cooperation with others. And a high-quality school system has to select what to learn. I mean, for quite some time we said, oh, okay, the volume of knowledge increases by, I don't know, it doubles every X years, so there is no point in learning. You should learn to learn. No, that's not the case. You should learn the basics so that when you're 18 years old, then you can handle all this information and make the selection yourself and use it for your purpose or for the purpose of your organization, your nation, for the world, and so on. And knowledgeable teachers will show you the way up through this to the next step of this ladder. And teachers should have expectations and make demands on students, and that's essential. And then, of course, teaching profession will become very attractive. And the fact that it's not like this, I have another spiral going in the other direction, but I'm not going to show you that. But this is so. Very simply, the view of knowledge has to be revert to the classical view that there is knowledge worth knowing. And if we adhere to that, what I call the classical view of knowledge, with concrete syllabi and curricula, and teacher-led instruction, then we know from the late 1800s that results will become very rapidly. And of course, if there is ever a free lunch, this is the one, because that school system will be well structured, you have less truancy, less social problems, less psychological problems among students and so on. So it's going to be even better than a free lunch. It's going to cost less than the system we have now, that's just where costs are exploding. And in fact, 42% of 15-year-old Americans have a psychiatric diagnosis. 42% of American 15-year-olds have a psychiatric diagnosis. And I claim that with the school system I'm advocating here, that would be maybe 2%, because some 2 or 3%, that's probably biologically reasonable. Because unfortunately, some people will have problems, but not 42%. But we have to also explain why the system we have is fragile, but why it's so good. So you should be really, really grateful that you grew up in this system. Thanks.
Great, Magnus. Thank you very much. If you learn a poem by heart, you'll own a masterpiece for the rest of your life. Tony Blair, 25 years ago, coming into power, said that his agenda was all about education, 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 and he's not the only political leader in the West to have had that message. But they have tended to stress higher education, academic education. How would you value or higher academic education as compared to the importance of primary and secondary education?
I mean, you can't have a good quality higher education without good primary and secondary education. And the system has, this is also true in Sweden, has survived because you have import of people from at the PhD student level and then at the postdoc level from former Eastern European countries and from Asian countries that got the kind of training that I'm talking about. And they are kind of salvaging the system. So there are hardly, at KTH, for instance, hardly any mathematical PhD students who were raised in the Swedish system. So, and in the long run, you may wonder, are these guys really going to carry this academic system in Sweden, since they have no, they're not entrenched in the system. So I remember Gunnar Carlsson was here a couple of years ago talking, and as he said, that it's me and the 60-year-old docent and all the others see KTH as a hotel where they happen to work just now, but if they're really successful, they will, of course, leave for another more highly ranked university or going back home. So therefore, it all fits together.
Primary it is. Okay, Magnus, thank you very much.